meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. This is where we will go. Nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill. So, what was the first production car in the United States of America? Some folks would say Ford, at least in the US, might even claim he invented the car. Both are untrue. Others may claim that Oldsmobile was the first, in reference to the curved dash of 1901 to 1904. This is also incorrect. The very first production car in the United States was the Duryea, which began production in 1893. Now, I do need to mention at this point that in the United States there was a man named George Baldwin Selden that had patented the basics of the internal combustion engine for vehicle use in 1877, prior to any such vehicle actually being built. And he never built one either, for that matter. But he did have a patent, and anyone who actually wanted to build a car in the United States either had to pay him royalty or challenge his patent. I'll deal with how that played out in a future episode, but for now, let's focus on Duryea. For the legend has it that it was a primitive gas buggy that Charles and Frank Duryea built and were tinkering with in the early 1870s. Apparently, the lawyer Selden saw this thing and based his patent on it. A sidebar: if I were Charles and Frank Duryea, I'd have go found George Selden in a dark alley and given him some good old-fashioned Murica country justice. But I digress. So, consider the United States of America of 1893. Roads? They need roads. They just don't have them. One journal during the period published in Britain actually said,
"Good roads in England and good roads in the United States are hardly synonymous terms. The average country roads in this country would be honoured by the term boulevard in America, and the average country road in America would be called something too strong to be reproduced in print by the English automobilist."
And this was written in 1903. That's 10 years after the appearance of the first Duryea production car. Unlike Europe, that had some 2,000 years of roads and such crisscrossing their landscape, the U.S. had no such Roman benefactors. So cars in the U.S. had to be built from the beginning to take punishment. And at this early stage in the development of the car, such was a tall order. But the Duryea brothers, they were up to the task. The first model, the 1893 Power Wagon, was a single-cylinder, one-horsepower machine that the brothers built in Springfield, Illinois. They took it to Massachusetts and showed the nation that it could indeed move on its own. The next year they built another, and this time stayed in their home state of Illinois, where they raced in the Chicago Times-Herald race, and being the only entrant to actually finish the race, they won. Due to this success, the brothers decided to go for broke and enter the London to Brighton veteran race for its first running in 1896. Technically, this made the Duryea the first American combustion engine car to be exported. Also, technically, they won the race, though their time was not recorded. After this success, the brothers had a falling out, and Frank handed the production of their first run of 13 vehicles built on the race-winning design. He was a good engineer, but not a great businessman, and the company ground to a halt by 1899. Frank ran off and handed control to Charles. Charles had a knack for both engineering and marketing, which such gifts in one person are and still are very rare. And in 1900, Duryea was off again with several new models to choose from. The new models were based on the original race-winning design, but with several important updates. All were high-wheelers. The wheels were very big, with diameters approaching 5 feet, so that they could traverse places where little or no roads existed. Also, the American public at this time was still quite skeptical about the reliability of these newfangled automobiles. So Charles came up with the first advertising slogan for an American car: "A carriage, not a machine." Both 3- and 4-wheeled cars were in the offing, both powered by 3-cylinder transverse engines and 2-geared transmissions. The three-wheeler could seat 4 persons and the four-wheeler 6. The additional 2 passengers sitting on seats atop the front axle, facing backwards towards the driver. The controls for both the throttle and the gears were on the steering tiller, which Duryea proclaimed allowed the car to be operated with just one hand. Not entirely true, but close enough. These cars were very successful both in America and in Europe, being license built in England from 1904 to 1907, and even in Belgium in 1908. The next major model built by Duryea came out in 1908. Another high-wheeler, which they called the Buggy Yacht. Yeah, the Buggy Yacht. Okay. This used a friction drive transmission, and the way that the thing changed its 2 gears was by using a series of levers to move the entire engine across the friction plate. However, by this time, the market for cars was turning away from the high-wheeler buggies and more towards the road-going cars. And Duryea as a company simply didn't continue with the trends. Sticking with the high-wheelers, it eventually petered out, and by 1916, Duryea was defunct and no more. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History. We'll see you next week. Peace.